Hello, everyone. Welcome back to these author interviews that I'm doing with my good friends and people that I had the privilege to work with in one way or another on the during the career journey. And so today I have Lewis with me. And Lewis, if you don't mind just sharing with others who you are and what you do.
Hello, my name is Louis Bianco. I am a Central Pennsylvania native. I was a former psychiatric charge nurse at the Pennsylvania Psychiatric Institute. I also worked as a peer specialist at Holy Spirit in Camp Hill. And I am also someone who has lived with the mental health diagnosis for over 20 years now.
Mhm.
Currently, I am an author and public speaker, and within the past year, I have spoken to college students who are about to graduate as lawyers, nurses, police officers, and I've also spoken to high school health teachers about developing curriculums for mental health moving forward.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for all that you do. I mean, that's a lot, and especially touching that next generation of helping professionals and kind of giving them both the inside out look, right? Like this is what it looks like for those of us receiving support or needing support, but also, this is how people helping can do little things a little differently to make
Yes,
things better for individuals and for a system as a whole. So yeah, I really appreciate all that you do.
thank you.
Yeah. So how did you get into writing?
That was a very long process. I had won a number of poetry contests in middle school, so I
Mhm.
was made aware that I was able to write, but most of that I turned into writing lyrics for hip hop. I was really into hip hop in my college days, and even as a professional, I was still pursuing the arts quite often.
Mhm.
But then I realized my message, because I've for a very long time have been trying to create not only mental health awareness but to move past awareness and start getting some of these messages that I learned as a patient out to everyone.
Mhm.
I started to realize that a lot of that got lost in the artistic ways that I was trying to write things, and as the music in general started to become more saturated, I realized I started to be looked at more as like a starving artist or someone trying to be a star, when I thought I was actually taking a form of content that I thought people absorbed
Mhm.
and putting my message in it that way. But so when it started to stray with the art, I realized that maybe the next way to maybe establish some credibility and also get my message heard in a different way was to write a book.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's ever
Awesome.
changing what people want and how they best will absorb messages. And
Yes.
because my message is so important to me, sometimes my style is ever changing as well, trying to get important information out to as broad of an audience as possible. And I know that
Mhm.
sounds slightly different to what some people who are artists would say, but again, because this message is so dear to me, I would rather hear how people want to receive information and give it to them that way. I hearken a quote, you don't teach the class you want, you teach the class that you have. So if this
Mm.
information is important and this is how you would like to receive it, I have no problem trying to deliver it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is actually very good. I think advice for all writers. Because if you have a vision of what you're trying to convey, that message you say has to be so important. No, it has to mean so much to you first in order for you to write about it. And even as you're writing, for those maybe who didn't explore music and just like writing, the art of writing itself, even as you write, you want to make sure that you are connecting with the audience that you have, the people who need the message, and you're also presenting it in a way that makes sense to them. So yeah, so there's a lot of wisdom in that. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Um, when you are writing though, when you are writing that message and putting it, in book form or chapter or blog, like how do you get into the flow? Because that's a struggle for many authors. You're just like,
Sure.
I had this idea up here. I'm not sure where to begin. I'm not sure how to even write it and like, get started. So for you, how's that process?
Well, I can tell you at this point, I've devoted my life to this message. So there's very few waking minutes that I am conscious that I'm not thinking
Yeah.
about things. So I know that I do a ton of work cognitively prior to the writing process, coming up with the broad ideas, refining them, figuring out how to make them make sense, figuring out how to connect them. I do a lot of that prior to sitting down. That's my preparation. I do like to
Mhm.
have that old fashioned beginning, middle, end. A lot of the
Mhm.
things I do are still old school. I guess I don't know much about writing, but once I do sit down and write, I have learned to not immediately go back and read every single sentence I write because I will get nothing done. And it's more
Mhm.
of a free form. You have to forgive yourself for grammatical errors. You have to forgive yourself for don't get stuck on spell checking.
Mhm.
This is about trying to get whatever you're carrying around cognitively somewhere else. And there's plenty of time to refine again and make it better and make it cleaner. And uh, I like to do things in blocks. And usually when I start, I finish.
Mhm.
So the book that I published with you, I think, I'm sure I thought about my entire life, but once I sat down and wrote it, I was done in about 2 weeks.
Mhm. Mhm.
I
Yeah.
set
And
out,
it's
I told myself for 1 hour a day, I am going to commit to sitting down and writing.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I stayed committed to that schedule and ended up with a product. Not a
Yeah.
finished product, but that's all right. A
Yeah.
manuscript.
Yeah. But then, and so just back, I wanted to backtrack a little bit. Like you say, you don't know about writing. You know a lot about writing, and you have to give yourself credit. Like you have that book, right behind you there. Maybe you want to hold it to show people you
Sure.
did.
See
Yeah,
my
that
book.
is an accomplishment. Yes, that is an accomplishment. Mental health, disability, perception versus reality, and and it started with you say like you had that thoughts, but you have to give yourself grace. Like I'm just gonna write, just gonna put it on paper on my computer, and then deal with it later. So once you had that, it took you 2 weeks to write the manuscript, and then like you say, you partner with us, and we had my very good friend Catherine Hughes, who did the editing, and then we the rest of the team did all the formatting, the promotional graphics, and yeah, and here you are, and that it's not just like not on just on print or online, but
Sure.
you have big plans and already kind of a lot of things in the works for your book. So if you want
Yes.
to fill us in and like where your book is going and what you're planning to do with it still, that would be great.
It's hard coming from a position that I'm in, but I'm sure for anybody, it's hard to sometimes when you dream big, you have to just make sure that you have responsible ways to get to each one of those short-term goals, and that it's not just a lofty dream. And as someone who
Mhm.
was diagnosed with a mental illness very early, I always had to toe that line of, well, I don't want to appear delusional, but I think I know what I'm
Mhm.
talking about. And I think my
Yeah.
book will be successful. But a lot of these things you have to plant kind of like a seed,
Yeah.
and that flower doesn't grow tomorrow. So there's a
Mhm.
lot of
Mhm.
belief that I had to have in my product, in my path, without anything coming in as adulation or any compensation. It has all been for nothing, but it
Mhm.
hasn't really been for nothing because I've had a goal and a plan and a path, and I've remained on it. But there,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
have to have a lot of belief in what you are trying to do, because you're not always going to receive that immediate gratification or credibility that is necessary to take the next step. So
Mhm. Mhm.
there's a lot of fostering of my own hope and positive belief, and also remaining realistic and operating within the confines and limits of society and everything. I don't
Yeah.
mind following the rules. I don't mind adversity, and I've had such a the world has had such a head start on me, but because of
Mhm.
certain beliefs, I'm catching up, and this book is proof of that.
Yeah, yeah. And I think for all of us too, all of us authors, writers, it's like we form and we forge and we improve our mindset as we write, as we pursue this journey. We all have things that we maybe thought, believed this should be done this way or that way, and we as we start in these journeys, and we're like, oh no, this needs to be tweaked, or this is no longer serving me. I need to change how I'm seeing things. I need to change how
Yes.
I'm working on things. And yeah, it's part of the growth process. And with your book too, I know like right now you're doing a lot of speaking engagement, and it's nice to see, even like you said earlier, like, oh, going to colleges and speaking even now virtually, people are requesting autograph copies of your book, and when you didn't even plan about it, so it was nice to hear that. And I knew that was coming, but I wanted you to also experience that on your own. It's like it's okay
Yes.
if it's virtual to still have a few books on hand, because you never know. So it's also when you see people requesting your work, people affirming what you do, that increases that um increasing your own self-confidence in your craft, in your work. And that,
Yes.
that it's a good booster for all of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And again, that confidence is so necessary when you are kind of forging a path. And being a
Mhm.
writer is often like being a pioneer. There is never a
Yeah.
guarantee that just because you put something on paper that it's going to be exactly what you desire it to be. So there's always a risk in putting yourself into a book or putting your work out into a world of people who don't know you, especially book writing right now, where people don't necessarily want to take the time to read something as long as they may have. So there's so much confidence, and then I would always also recommend that you maintain a realistic confidence and
Hmm.
that you don't
Hmm.
ever allow it to sink too low or too high, because there
Right,
will
right.
always be inevitable ups and downs in the
Hmm.
journey if you choose to try to become a writer as well. I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah.
now, um, and I put it out in May, but I'm just now starting to get a little bit of that interest. I'm starting to have teachers saying that they want other teachers to read it, and I'm just now starting. I believed that that would happen,
Hmm.
but I wanted it to happen, of course, as soon as I put the book out. And
Hmm.
there was
Hmm.
that long period of just believing in the path realistically and making sure I had other options if the book didn't
Hmm.
pan out the way I thought it would.
Right, right. And I think too, it was and it's still brave of you to launch and launch your first book in the middle of a pandemic. Like when we
Yeah.
did it, it was 2 months after Corona hit here in the U.S. and things are just shut down, and you were launching this book, and you had a big vision about this book being in schools, and
Yes.
but the schools were shut down. People had other things on their minds, and
Right.
and so I just want to applaud you for not giving up on your vision, because now you are doing that in the, maybe not in the level that you thought you would be now, like 5 months
Sure.
into it, but you're starting to see the fruit of that perseverance. Where
Yes.
teachers are reading it, teachers want it. And even before the launch, I have to tell you though, I've been doing this now, for a few years, and even now that I'm publishing other people's work, your book launch was most one of the most profitable one, because usually during the launches what happened is like we put the ebook and a lot of people usually go for the ebook first, and we usually sell the ebook for 99 cents in order to get more people to get it, to buy it. So people, most of my author, the launches online, the online sales are usually ebook only, and then because it's 99 cents, they're only getting so little from that, from the online sales, and then most people will sell like autograph copies then in person or with their friends, and that's how they do for a very good virtual launch. So but for you, like, you didn't do anything in person, and you said, I'm sure I'm not even going to do the autograph copies right now. And honestly, you still beat the online sales of people who were, people who did it differently. So
Yes.
it's okay to be true to yourself, and
Thank you.
so I just, I want to again applaud you for that. It might not always see that because you didn't I never even shared that with you, but just to let you know, that was a pretty good first launch. And even the way you did it, in the simplicity, being true to yourself, it was worth it, and I know you had conversation with other people, like getting into universities, and so all of those things are still, I know they're still in the works, but it's good that not to give up, like keeping
Right.
keeping that vision and keeping those connections going.
And I just want to say, when the pandemic hit, I mean, I had a full scale in my mind kind of advertisement plan, and
Hmm.
then I saw something that was greater than any work of any single individual, and I
Hmm.
purposefully chose to step back. However, the content of the book, and the people who had bought it and read it prior to the pandemic, we are now seeing kind of in real time people needing to learn more how to handle crisis, whether they have mental illness or not,
Right,
how to
right.
handle toxic stress at greater levels than they're used to, whether they have mental illness or not. So
Hmm.
because the book was released and I was able to at least establish credibility prior to
Hmm.
everything that we're seeing, uh, I'm now not being called in necessarily to talk about the book. I'm being called in to help. And
Yes.
that's my greatest goal. That's why I became a nurse. So now I am doing my best to not, it's not only the kids, it's not only the patients in the ER, the teachers, the nurses. This is not like, if you're in a power position right now, you're not suffering as well. This is collective
Everyone.
across the board suffering, and everybody kind of needs a crash course just
Hmm.
on a couple wellness and self-care techniques.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. People needed this now, and
Yes.
kind of establishing. establishing that credibility even before your book comes out is important. Sometimes, often new authors think, oh, I'm going to wait. I even have people asking me, I'm writing my book now. I'm going to wait until I'm done to figure out how I'm going to market it. I'm like,
Hmm.
whoa, 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 go like reverse, reverse. You start promoting your book before the book comes out.
Yes.
And it's not just like you say, it's not about promoting a book, it's promoting your message and creating your platform, what you're going to be known for and speaking about and writing about. And you talk about that all the time. That message has to be so important to you that
Hmm.
you cannot not share it. So you have to talk about it all the time, everywhere, so that you yourself become comfortable with doing that. And if people call it marketing or not, it's literally you knowing that your message is so important that everybody needs to hear it.
Yes.
And then when the book comes out, it's just like, oh, we already knew it was coming. Even if you didn't announce the book was coming, it just kind of natural transition or progression of what you've already been doing, and it kind of leverage that whole visibility that you created before the book comes out.
Yeah.
It came out. Yeah.
And there's something to be said about pacing all of those things that you just
Yes.
described.
Yes.
People, as much as we don't like to wait, anticipation is still something that will spark the curiosity of people. So
Hmm.
I also made sure not to oversaturate my Facebook feed or anything. I believe in just creating intrigue, and I also believe in kind of the long-term success of something, just to also protect my own psyche of
Hmm.
not having maybe an immediate boom. So
Hmm.
I believe in long term, so I didn't force or create any type of urgency when I was advertising,
Hmm.
because I had longer term goals even than the release of the book. It's what will this book
Hmm.
be? Can this someday be a necessary required reading for a nursing student or someone going into the mental health profession?
Yeah.
So I wasn't too nervous about maybe not getting that immediate boom. Although, like anybody else, I'd be lying if I said I didn't want it. I just
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
had to plan kind of in multiple ways, but with a healthy pace. You don't.
Yes.
The last thing you want if something's important to you is for people to start rolling their eyes like, "Oh, there he is again." So
Hmm.
I don't ever want, and I fear kind of having people scrolling through social media, which is such an advertisement
Hmm.
hotspot
Hmm.
right now, rolling their eyes at something that I believe is important. So I just tried to not overindulge at any given moment, and I also had to make sure that I inserted myself, because when you do create something, you need to insert yourself and let the
Yes.
world know you did it. You worked
Hmm.
hard on
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
There's just a balance that we
Yeah.
all try to
Oh yeah.
find.
Yeah. Balance is true. It is important. Balance for yourself as you're writing, that self-care so that you're not overwhelming, overextending yourself with the writing and the speaking and all of that. And also balance as you're promoting your message so that, it's still in a way that's interesting to people, and people, are craving for that information in the way that's presented. I say, just think about, even for all of us, I might need, not that I might, we all need, toothpaste, toilet paper, water, like those things that we actually need every day. But how many times, like, we see those commercials, and it's just like, oh, there goes the Bounty, commercial again. My
Yes.
teeth even dance with this and that. It's like, and if it comes too familiar, sometimes people tune it out.
Yes.
So you have to diversify in your way of presenting your message. And if you always tell people buy, 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 they're just like, okay, I'm tired of buying. I know. So you want to make sure you're presenting your message in a way that it's, one, inspiring, one, with intention, and it's something that people feel like they can gain something from it, even sometimes without you selling them that you're buying, you're selling it. When I started publishing, like I was been writing, and that was, my path, and I never, so talking about growing in your own, in your own belief and all that, I never envisioned myself as a publisher,
Mhm.
because I was doing all these other stuff. People who know me as a mental health consultant. I do, a lot of disability advocacy and work, and it's like that's what she was known for. And then a lot of people that was helping with, needed more the life coaching, so I transitioned into that. And now writing was part of this extension of what I was doing, but
Right.
it was never in my plans, honestly, never. I never saw that coming. But the way it came is because of all the work I was doing, just sharing, like, I did this, and not even like I did this, like, here's, it could be a course that I know that came out, could be just something that even I win from doing a speaking engagement,
Right.
and so I've been just sharing some of my journey and what I was learning, how it was benefiting me and others. And then, my book kind of came out of that, and people like, oh my goodness, she did this, she did that. People start coming to me to ask me to publish the book, not
Yeah.
because I was selling publishing, but because I was selling a message that, was hopeful, that people needed. And then, as far as that started kind of to play out, if you want, I think it was like a year later when someone actually referred someone else to me, and the lady's like, well, I went on your website and I found nothing about publishing. I'm like, oh yeah, we never advertise it. But but here it's like, honestly, the one of the biggest, things that we do now at Grayson Consulting, in time, and and all of that. But it wasn't, it wasn't something that was like, I'm buying and selling this book. No, I'm selling this publishing services. It was just, again, sharing the message that were coming through those books that we're doing, and
Yes.
people seeing how their own messages could be, helpful to someone else, and people wanting to be part of that.
Right.
So yeah, you can definitely do a lot of, marketing without it being marketing and salesy.
Right.
Yeah.
It's almost like you live it. So I had a lot of momentum prior to putting the book out because of what I've done with my life prior to putting the book out. So I've already
Right.
established networks, and I've coached high school sports, and I've worked at
Yeah.
psychiatric facilities, and I've done all of these different things in school facilities and psychiatric facilities,
Mhm.
and then as long as you kind of live that message, after a while, people might roll their eyes, but we're looking, for me, like at 10 plus
Mhm.
years at doing this same thing. I mean, the book that
Exactly.
we put out in May, I had written 3 years before you and I met. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
this stuff that sometimes you have to push pause and be
Mhm.
patient, even if you know what you have is worthwhile. I never would have expected meeting you when I did, but I had my
Mhm.
manuscript with me because I brought it everywhere I went in case I
Yeah.
met someone like you, never
Yeah.
knowing when that moment might be.
Yeah. Yeah. And now the rest is history, right?
Yeah.
The rest is history. Oh, thank you so much for all that you do. Before we close here, is there any additional advice that you could give it new authors?
I would never tell anybody a style to write. I just know that I have found a certain amount of success as someone writing about things personal to me. Um, Sometimes taking some of the very specific details out so that people can put themselves in the position of me as the writer. I think that it goes a long way. I've had a lot of people say they can't put the book down because I think that I write it, even though it's I don't want to give everything away. I just don't write it with any specific detail enough that you wouldn't be able to say that reminds me of my brother, or that reminds me of my wife, or that reminds me of, for people to be able to see something other than your face when they are reading something that you're writing, it allows them to feel more. And as someone who's trying to create, kind of new thoughts on emotion and cognition, it's important for me to write simplistically sometimes, and somewhat vaguely, so that people can attach whatever they must attach in order to remain interested.
Yeah, so much wisdom there, because people need to be, especially if you're writing nonfiction, people need to be able to relate to your writing in order, again, like I said, for them to stay engaged, to stay interested, but also to get your message. If
Right.
they can't relate to what they're reading, then your message is not coming across the way you probably intended it to. So
So
yeah.
I call myself an edutainer. So I try to be as non-fictionally fiction, or as fictionally
Yeah.
I don't even know how to say it, but I try to write nonfiction in as
Hmm.
entertaining a fashion as possible.
Yes.
That spoonful of sugar to help the medicine go down. That's been my goal from the beginning, and
Yeah.
it'll be my goal moving forward.
Yeah, yeah, and honestly, you do a very good job at it. I just love your writing style, and
Thank you.
I agree. Like, people have told you already. Like, yeah, it's one of those books you can't just put down. It's like you want to read it to the end, and then as you're reading it, you are just seeing your own community, your own life, your own social network, if you want, throughout the book, and see, oh, all these places that I could have done differently, that would could have been more supportive, and
And
and,
then
and
you
that
can
is
reflect quietly
exactly.
within your own head. It's nobody pointing fingers.
Yes.
It allows us to kind of reflect within ourselves, which is also the least confrontational way to kind of do self checks.
Yeah, totally agree. So where can people find you?
Oh goodness, I'm on Instagram at the Louis Jojo _RN, Facebook Louis Bianco RN CPS. I'm on the podcast network called Anchor. It's anchor.fm/Louis Jojo RN. I do a podcast called Patient US.
Mhm.
I'm starting to put my video game creation out on YouTube and Twitch, and that actually has educational undertones as well that are written out. So I'm launching my little full scale assault on improving the mental health of our community.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, beautiful. And we'll be sure to add those links. You'll get to me and I'll reshare it out so that people can easily just click and follow you there.
Sure,
But again, thank you for so much. Thank you so much for all that you do, and thank you for making the time to talk about it with me.
definitely. Thank you as always.